So hello, my name is Björn. I'm Björn Müller from Zurich in Switzerland. I'm managing co-founder of Stride, the Unschool, an education provider and think tank for collaboration, collaborative leadership, and social innovation. And my background is in psychology, sociology, and in general in well, let's say experimental ways of getting people together to come up with something new. Somehow, if I take a red thread through what I've been doing, um, I've um, I've always enjoyed and I've been involved in ways of getting people together, to convene people, to come up with something from a party to whatever. And now I realized lately in the last 4 or 5 years that this could actually be a field by itself, a field that we call social innovation. And yeah, so I work a lot between let's say the worlds of research, coming out of a PhD and a postdoc. So I'm yeah, close to academia, between research, education, the arts, working a lot also with artists, and some ways maybe activism. So it kind of, it merges these different worlds. My interest is in social innovation and lifelong learning, and especially how they potentially relate to each other. So how can we create space and time in people's lives for them to flourish and develop, and at the same time contribute to the changing society, and yeah, bring social innovation to this world. So why Untitled? First of all, I love the narrative, and I think it's very timely to do a countdown kind of conference to say like, hey, we have one decade, and to really bring the urgency. I do believe that experimentation is an important part of this whole endeavor, and to bring together the experimentators from around the globe and to inspire each other and do this kind of agenda setting. I think this is a unique mixture, and Demos has a reputation of being great conveners and bringing together these unlikely alliances, which I really appreciate and would love to contribute to. I feel we live in a very peculiar time where we have at the same time too much and not enough novelty or innovation. On the one side, we have tremendous efforts in bringing about innovation in the private sectors, and we have a whole infrastructure for it, from incubators to accelerators to programs and competitions and I don't know what. And it produces a lot of so-called innovation. But on the other side, the fundamental things are not changing, and some of the fundamental issues are not addressed by it, or only on the surface. I think we still engage in rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic in some ways. And when it comes to innovation, I really wonder, my field is social innovation, as I call it at the moment. So the question is there a space and kind of an infrastructure for doing innovation differently across all the different sectors, and where innovation is not confined also to the private sector so much, but involves all the different actors? And can we imagine a time and a space, and I would love to imagine that in 10 years, that social innovation has not a similar infrastructure, but at least because it needs to be different, I think, but it has an infrastructure also in terms of public kind of support, state support for doing social innovation experiments and endeavors. And this for me comes together with, or it equals actually a change in the paradigm of innovation as such, to move away from technological innovation and to understand innovation, social innovation, really as something where we look at the practices of our everyday life, and we ask, maybe guided by a very simple and maybe pathetic question of what is the good life. We ask of how can we change or innovate these practices. And so I reimagine, or I imagine that we have kind of a new discourse on innovation and a new practice on innovation, which spans all the sectors. In terms of the discourse, I feel it's really about challenging a very modern way of understanding innovation, which is tied to a modern idea of, for once, maybe what I would call dynamic stabilization. So we live in societies that, for now, stabilize their standard of living, their structures, by the need of ever growing. And this is coupled with an idea of the good life, which maybe you can boil down to the idea of a good life kind of is reached by an ever increasing access and an ever increasing range into the world, which is something we are all kind of guided by, and which fuels a lot of our innovation efforts. In the end, trying to make life available as fast as possible, as kind of to make it as easy as possible, and so forth. And to move away from that, and also the idea of innovation into something where innovation is driven by an idea of, maybe you could call it participation, but of life itself being central. I really wonder, how would a world look like where life or aliveness is a central category for our political, social, and economic agendas? And how would it fuel innovation in a very different way? So that's something I dream about, that this changes, and that in 10 years it looks very differently, and that even mainstream actors have a different, let's say, orientation for their innovation efforts, in very basically that it contributes to good life, which is a question which will never be answered finally, which is a good thing because it keeps us going, but it questions deeply what really is meaningful and fulfilling for all of us. So starting from the observation and hypothesis that we need, let's just put it very simply and plainly, we need a lot of people working on the future of our world and our society. How do we create space and time for that? And because I see a lot of things are not happening because people are stuck in their, let's say, confines of their professions and their careers and so forth. And to open up social innovation as something where a lot of people can contribute, I would love to see experiments that use lifelong learning as a lever in some ways, and come up with formats, as we do at Stride, our organization, to come up with formats that bring 3 dimensions in lifelong learning together, which is make it personally meaningful, professionally relevant, and at the same time contribute to societal challenges and questions. So to come up with formats that bring, maybe even reclaim lifelong learning as it was imagined in the beginning, and to open up space and time for people to engage with these issues in the first place. I think this is something that is super important and needed, that not only us kind of nerds and kind of, world changers are out there, but that many people can think along, do along, and get involved on many stages. But for that, we need to societally also open up that space and give people time and space for that. If it's not basic income, maybe lifelong learning opens a space for that. Combined with that, an idea that we are working on and that I would like to discuss and maybe also see is, like, maybe we do need a bit of institutional or professional entrepreneurship in terms of inventing a new even profession or discipline that allows, for example, people that have doing, change management, and or from the other side, service design. What is their new kind of identity and role in a time where it's about systemic change? So to kind of create a profession, a field that is truly transdisciplinary and that allows people to identify with becoming social innovators, also from a professional perspective, whether they are doing still change management, but with a systemic perspective, or service design, but with a very systemic perspective. So yeah, that's something I would love to see. To make that vision come true, I believe we need to bring on, well, basically all sectors, but for us especially, higher education actors, together with representatives of corporate life, the business world as well, and public administration, especially when it comes really to lifelong learning and bringing a new paradigm of lifelong learning that in the end should benefit all kind of sectors. It's about formats, it's about infrastructures, it's about the very basic ideas in it. So definitely we need to bring them to a table. Well, a short background before my question. I've been part of endeavors like 10-15 years ago, for example, the let's say globalization critical movement of attack here in Germany. And it was an amazing phenomenon in terms of the attitude of no, we don't want something, brought together a lot of people. But as soon as it opened up to, okay, what world do we want to imagine? It split up. It split up in 100 kind of perspectives and sects. So the question that I would like to pose to the Untitled community is, can we be patient and forgiving for our imperfect visions, and trust in the good intentions and the moving forward, and that moving forward is more important than the perfect vision?